Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. So with the recent balance patch on the PTR, I figured I'd do a bit of a winners and losers going over heroes that benefit from the changes, the obvious ones, and then also other heroes that may also have their pick rate increased and may become a bit more meta. Then of course we have the losers, which again, fairly obvious with the ones that were nerfed, but also asking the key question, is Goats comp dead? We also have a big misconception surrounding Trace and how good she's going to be, but we'll get onto that in a second. We'll go over the winners because naturally there tends to be more winners than losers. We start with Reaper because duh, he just recently got buffed in a big hefty way, and whichever way that you look at it, Reaper's pick rate and win rate should spike up due to these changes. I don't necessarily know if we're going to have a Beyblade meta returning at any point, but these changes for Reaper do look really good. So even if Goats comp does stay, even with all of these changes, Reaper should be a hell of a lot better against it. Blizzard knew that his effective range was his biggest issue, he had to get in close, so it's more of a case of when Reaper's in your face, you need to be very careful, because not only will he kill you, he'll also be very hard to kill himself. And because of that, Reaper at the lowest ranks definitely is going to be a hell of a lot stronger than he was before, and he was already pretty good in stuff like gold and below. Another obvious winner is Zarya, especially when you look at some of the nerfs to Brigitta and Diva, and just armor as a whole. Zarya has no armor, so she doesn't get handicapped by the recent armor changes. Not only that, when you have the nerfs to Diva's defense matrix, it means that it's a lot easier for Zarya to sneak a graph past a Diva. They're not going to be eaten at random. And also, as I mentioned Reaper, Zarya does have a lot of really good synergy with the hero, being able to shield him as he's getting in close, provide him a bit of cover, and both of their ultimates work together in a very good fashion too. And to complete the whole Beyblade meta sort of section of this video, we of course have Anna, who is a sniper healer, really good for long range, has awesome synergy with Reaper. Of course, the Beyblade meta was named that for a reason. And with Brigitta no doubt losing a little bit more of a pick rate, it just means that things might open up for more compositions, which is what I want to get onto now. Goats came around because it was incredibly strong against one composition, a composition that I really do think is going to come back in a big way after these changes, and that was Double Sniper. So of course, Hanzo and Widowmaker do end up on the list of winners. Double Sniper only became less meta due to tanks, Brigitta, and the way that this composition was being played. But now that these tanks are fundamentally weaker as a full composition, Double Sniper in a way should make a big return. The idea of fighting from a distance, having an Orisa shield to keep your team alive, just being able to get instant picks might be the meta that we go back to for the foreseeable future. It's hard to say really at this point, but I would surmise that this composition and this meta that we've been in for so long countered this composition, so if Goats does diminish in some case, this composition of Double Snipers should make a return, or just any sense of anti-dive I feel, but I don't really want to add McCree and Junkrat to this list of winners because it's really hard to say. I do however want to add the latest sniper in the game, Ashe. Because of Hanzo and Widowmaker potentially being more meta, I do think that Ashe could make a return in that fashion too. Not only is she really good from a long distance, maybe not as good as Widowmaker or Hanzo, but also has the dynamite, has a really cool ult that can do a lot of really interesting interactions, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Ashe in place of Hanzo or Widowmaker in some areas if Double Sniper does make a return. Seeing as we mentioned a lot to do with snipers being more popular, I do want to add Wrecking Ball to the list of winners. It's very much a case of if Widowmaker or Hanzo become more meta, then Wrecking Ball has a chance to be a strong pick to try and contest, and in inverted commas counter that. It's hard to say whether it'll be for certain, but I do see Wrecking Ball being able to be used a lot more than he is now, because there's very little reason to play him unfortunately. But I do think if snipers come back in a big way, then we could see a lot of Wrecking Ball too, to try and counter it. Another hero that strings all of this together of course is Mercy, who I do as well think that would make a return in this meta. She's a little bit better than she used to be, not in a massive way, but she's still a lot stronger. And I do think that her synergy with all of the heroes that we've just mentioned is fairly strong, being able to resurrect targets that might be taken out instantly by a Widowmaker or a Hanzo, that the damage boost might become a really integral part to the game too, especially for one-shot killing certain targets, which is why Double Sniper was really good in the first place. Orisa makes this list for a number of reasons. The main one of course is everything that we went over with Double Snipers becoming much more meta potentially, but also it has to do with how her weapon interacts with armor. There was this really cool graphic made by IFAP, oh Christ. In any case, they show off exactly how the damage increase works with the recent changes to armor, showing that Orisa is the hero that benefits the most from these changes, with a potential 30% damage increase against targets with armor. This of course is body shot, as it doesn't interact in the same way for headshots. That mixed with her synergy with the snipers and Mercy, I think does mean that Orisa could come back in a big fashion. Seeing as we're looking at this graphic, it's worth adding Sombra, Soldier and Genji to the list. The DPS options will open up to an extent, and with GOATs being less prominent at least, dive heroes should be able to make a bit more of an impact if Brigitta gets picked less. But that's where we get into the misconception of Tracer. As you're seeing from the diagram, she gets no benefit from these changes with armor. She doesn't do any more damage than she did before. So it doesn't mean necessarily that Tracer's going to come back in a big fashion, much like some of these other heroes might. That's not to say that Tracer's pick rate or win rate could go up. If Brigitta is picked less, then it means that the floor is much more open for Tracer to dance around. But you get the idea. Like, a lot of people are looking, oh, these armor changes, that means Tracer's going to be really good. If you're looking at the actual numbers, it's just not the case. It's the same as it was before. However, if you look at the basis of tank heroes being picked less, Brigitta being picked less, but yeah, I can see Tracer coming back in a big way. But the main big misconception is that she benefits the most from these changes, which isn't necessarily true. Now we go over to the losers. The obvious ones are, of course, Brigitta and Diva. They were both nerfed. Brigitta's rally now diminishes after 30 seconds, which I think is such a nice change. I've been asking for this ever since Brigitta came out and people were saying that she's a bit strong. But it's nice to see that that eventually happens after 30 seconds. A good amount of time to have that rally, but not too long. Diva, the defense matrix, has a bit of a longer cooldown when you don't use it, from 1 second to 2. This should alleviate all of the random spam of defense matrix. Eating stuff like gravitons and pulse bombs by accident, which I do enough of, I can promise you. I'd love to say that a lot of these were eaten due to skill, but they just weren't. It was just me spamming right click. I do think the Diva is still going to be picked quite a lot. It's just typical Diva fashion. Defense Matrix is still an amazingly strong ability, but it is going to be a lot harder. I don't think we're going to see Diva dive off in as big of a fashion as other heroes. I think the same could be said for Brigitta. I think she'll still have a situations where she's going to be useful, but these heroes both, of course, suffer because of these changes. Reinhardt, need I say more really? Unfortunately, he is one that has a lot of armor, and with all of the heroes that I just mentioned, he might struggle to an extent. It's hard to say though. I'm very much on the fence about whether Reinhardt will suffer, but based on the fact that all tanks to an extent are going to have a rough old time, especially if they have armor, then I'm more inclined to agree that Reinhardt is going to suffer more than, say, Orisa or Wrecking Ball. I think Reinhardt players are just masochists at this point, to be fair. Like, he's such a rough hero to play a lot of the time, but can have a huge impact in the right hand. As I said, if the meta changes in a way that snipers become more popular, Reinhardt might be okay, but I'm certainly looking at stuff like Reaper, for example, being able to run at a Reinhardt, there's very little that you can do. It might be a bit of a rough old time. And finally, when we're looking at heroes, I do think Zenyatta is a bit of a loser here. One of the main things that made GOAT's comp stronger, especially in the later stages, was the fact that you could have rally stacked on top of a Zenyatta to give him 100 armor underneath his shields, which basically made him a 250 HP character. Armor being weaker and Brigitta's rally diminishing after a certain amount of time means that you can't stack all of this armor on top of a Zenyatta, and also a Zarya to an extent, but I do think the Zarya should be alright in this case. Zenyatta loses a good portion of his health, and that health becomes redundant in any case because of the armor changes, but I do feel that to an extent Zenyatta is going to be a lot weaker due to these changes. Finally, I wanted to go over, does GOAT's comp end up on the losers list? I do think so. I think if you wanted to choose your words correctly, it's a case of the GOAT's meta dying as opposed to GOAT's comp itself. Much like Dive, I do think GOAT's comp is still going to be used when appropriate. You can still play it in comp if you want to, and it still might be okay. But much like Dive comp, you can play it a good portion of the time and still have good success. But it's not specifically the meta that people are running, right? That's kind of how I see GOAT's comp at the moment. Still good when it matters, like double sniper, anti-dive, or dive comp itself, but the GOAT's comp meta dominance, I think, is definitely at an end with these changes. But do let me know what you think of this list, whether I missed any heroes both off the winners and losers list. Do let me know in the comments below. And are you excited for this patch? I know I am. There's going to be some very exciting stuff happening in game, so I can't wait. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time.